"There's nothing left, Grandpa," whispered little Ilara, her fragile body trembling with fever as the icy wind howled through the cracks of the ancient fortress. Alaric, an elderly widower and former sage, felt his heart clench, tears freezing on his time-worn face. Driven from everything they knew, with his 2 sick granddaughters on the brink of death, he was digging the cold earth for roots when his fingers touched something hard and cold, a slab hidden beneath centuries of oblivion. And what he discovered there promised to be their only hope of salvation, or the end of everything. Alaric froze, his old heart pounding a frantic rhythm in his chest. His wrinkled fingers traced the cold surface of the slab, feeling the stone's ancientness, so different from the damp earth he had been turning over. A spark of hope, faint as the flame of a dying candle, ignited within him, fighting against the despair that had clung to him for weeks. Could this be a sign? An answer to his silent prayers, whispered with every exhausting step, every painful cough from his granddaughters? He looked at Ilara, who was now weakly dozing, her breath shallow, and then at Lyra, huddled beside her, her lips pale. Their image so fragile renewed his determination. With a deep sigh that rasped in his dry throat, Alaric began to work. His hands, already calloused by life and incessant searching, now moved with renewed urgency. He used the small shovel he carried, more for digging roots than moving stones, and then his own fingernails, tearing at the compacted earth around the slab. Every pebble removed, every clod of earth dislodged, was a small triumph. The effort was immense for his weary bones, but the vision of his granddaughters, even if only in his mind, was a powerful engine. Slowly, with groans of effort, he tried to stifle. The slab yielded, revealing a dark crevice and cold, musty air rising from the depths. The crevice widened enough for Alaric to peer through, a dense darkness which seemed to swallow the meager daylight filtering through the ruins, stretched downwards. The smell of ancient earth and something else, something metallic and forgotten, filled his nostrils. He hesitated for a moment, a sage's prudence warning him about the unknown. But the image of Ilara and Lyra wasting away with each passing hour extinguished any fear. He had nothing to lose, only to gain. Carefully, he squeezed through the opening, descending irregular and slippery steps, groping his way in near total darkness. After what felt like an eternity, his feet touched flatter ground. The air, though still cold, felt less dense, and a vast darkness stretched before him. He groped for something he could use as a torch, remembering a piece of cloth and some tallow he kept. With trembling hands, he managed to light a small flame, which danced, revealing the outline of an underground chamber. The walls were of polished stone, adorned with strange and long-forgotten symbols, a silent testament to a civilization that time had swept away. The flickering torchlight revealed piles of gleaming objects, gold and silver coins, jewels encrusted with precious stones, polished metal goblets that gleamed even in the dim light. Alaric felt a shock. The treasure was vast, more than he had ever seen in his entire life. For an instant, his mind filled with practical thoughts. Food, blankets, a warmer shelter. That would solve the hunger and the cold, but not the illness. His eyes, accustomed to seeking knowledge, did not linger long on the material riches, though a pang of relief touched him. He knew that the true value lay elsewhere. And then he saw. On a stone pedestal, covered by a thin veil of dust, lay a stack of ancient scrolls. Some were rolled and sealed, others open, displaying delicate calligraphy and intricate drawings. Alaric's heart leaped. That was what he was truly looking for. With reverent care, he approached, reaching out to touch one of the scrolls. The dry, fragile texture beneath his fingers was the promise of something far more valuable than gold. It was knowledge. It was the voice of a distant past. Perhaps the answer to his granddaughter's future. There was no time to lose. His granddaughters were up above, every minute too precious to waste. With renewed effort, Alaric carefully selected some of the best preserved scrolls, feeling the ancestral wisdom in his hands, and a small pouch of coins, enough for immediate needs of food and warmth. He tucked the treasures into his cloak, feeling the weight of the hope and promise he now carried. The climb up the irregular steps seemed even steeper, but now he had a clear purpose, a light at the end of the tunnel of his anguish. He needed to return to Elara and Lyra to share this new, though still fragile, promise of life. The future, which had once seemed a dark abyss, now opened with a glimpse of possibility, all thanks to that secret hidden beneath the ruins. Alaric emerged from the darkness, breathless, with a renewed glint in his tired eyes. The cold air of the fortress hit him, but he barely felt it. His gaze darted to the huddled figures of Elara and Lyra, asleep under the worn cloak. A lump formed in his throat. The hope was heavy, but the urgency of his granddaughters was greater. He knelt, trembling hands brushing damp strands of hair from Elara's forehead. The fever still burned, Lyra's lips dry and cracked. Carefully, Alaric took out the pouch of coins, enough for fresh bread and milk from the nearby village. The priority, however, was warmth. He remembered a recess less exposed to the winds. With the strength that necessity lent him, he lifted them one at a time and carried them to the most sheltered spot, covering them with what remained of his clothes and his cloak. Sitting beside them, Alaric opened the scrolls with reverence. The faint daylight was insufficient, but he couldn't wait. His eyes, accustomed to unraveling mysteries, fixed on the ancient writings. The symbols were elegant but unknown, a forgotten language. Frustration threatened to overwhelm him. What if he couldn't decipher the knowledge beyond his grasp? He felt Elara's gaze. The girl had woken, her feverish eyes fixed on the scrolls. "What is that, Grandpa?" she whispered, her voice weak. Alaric smiled, hoping to convey reassurance. "It's our hope, my dear, the key to your healing." Vidi. The mention of healing brought a faint glimmer to Elara's clouded eyes. Lyra, still asleep, seemed oblivious to the spark of optimism. Alaric knew he needed more light and time, total concentration. But time was a luxury he didn't have. Every shallow breath from his granddaughters was a cruel reminder of the urgency. He picked up the thinnest scroll and began to examine it with the patience of a craftsman. He traced the symbols with his finger, searching for patterns, repetitions, anything that might spark recognition. He recalled ancient stories from his village about civilizations that had flourished and vanished. Hours passed, or perhaps minutes, the notion of time distorting in his exhausted mind. The sun began to set, and the temperature plummeted. Alaric felt the cold penetrate his bones, but he didn't move. Immersed, his mind struggled to connect the dots. Suddenly, a small, repeated symbol caught his attention. A stylized leaf. He had seen it before in an ancient herbarium, a book that spoke of medicinal plants. A flame of understanding ignited. It wasn't the entire cure, but a beginning, a small door opening in a labyrinth of mysteries. He felt exhaustion, but also renewed fervor. That symbol, that leaf, was a clue. It meant that the knowledge was related to nature, to herbs, to the world he, as a former sage, knew well. He looked at his granddaughters, their pale faces illuminated by the last light of day. The promise of healing, once a distant mirage, now seemed more tangible, a thin thread of hope to be followed with all his soul. Alaric knew the journey would be arduous, but he was no longer alone. He held the past in his hands, and Elara and Lyra's future in his heart. The small, stylized leaf on the scroll was more than a drawing. It was a beacon in the darkness, a promise whispered across centuries. Alaric felt a shiver run down his spine, not from cold, but from a deep emotion that blended relief and overwhelming urgency. He had found a starting point. If the ancestral knowledge was linked to plants, then he, with his experience as a former sage and herb master, had a chance. With his heart pounding, Alaric carefully folded the scroll and tucked it against his chest. The sun had already bid farewell, and the darkness of night began to swallow the ruins. He looked at Ilara and Lyra. Ilara's breathing remained shallow, and Lyra, though still asleep, seemed even paler in the growing gloom. Their sight reinforced his decision. He couldn't wait. Every moment was precious. He needed a plan. First, food and warmth. The coins in the pouch weighed in his cloak, a newly acquired tool to combat hunger and cold. But the cure would demand more than gold. It would demand his mind, his feet, and his faith. He decided that, at dawn, he would go to the nearest village, not the one that had expelled them, but one he knew to be a little further away, where he might not be recognized. He would buy the essentials: bread, milk, perhaps a thicker blanket, and more importantly, he would discreetly seek information about the local flora without raising suspicion. The night was long and restless. Alaric remained awake, watching his granddaughters, feeling their feverish foreheads. He tried to decipher a few more symbols on the scrolls. By the faint light of a small fire he managed to kindle with dry twigs. But exhaustion and anxiety were barriers. His eyes were heavy, but his mind refused to rest. He reviewed the leaf symbol, trying to evoke memories of plants with similar characteristics, of legends about their healing properties. At the first sign of light on the horizon, Alaric rose, his muscles stiff and aching. He kissed Ilara and Lyra's foreheads, murmuring words of affection and promise. "Grandpa will be back soon, my little ones," with hope in his hands. The pain of leaving them, even for a few hours, was excruciating, but the need was greater. He covered them as best he could, ensuring the small fire still offered minimal warmth. The path to the village was arduous. The terrain was uneven, and the icy wind cut at his skin, but Alaric's determination was a shield. He mingled with the few merchants and peasants already stirring, with the hood of his cloak covering his aged face. With the coins, he bought fresh bread, a flask of milk, and a piece of wool fabric, the thickest he could find. His eyes, however, were fixed on the herb stalls and conversations about nature. He asked about rare, tear-shaped leaf plants, vaguely describing the scroll's symbol as if it were a curiosity. No one seemed to recognize the exact description, but an old herbalist with wise eyes and earth-stained hands mentioned a night herb, which grew in damp, sheltered places and which is said to have mysterious properties, but is difficult to find and dangerous if used without knowledge. Alaric's heart leaped. Dangerous if used without knowledge. That made sense for an ancestral cure. It was the clue he needed. With the provisions and the new information, Alaric hastened his steps back to the fortress. The sun was already high, but the urgency in his chest did not diminish. He felt a new layer of hope, now more concrete, more palpable. The night herb. He needed to find it, and then, with the help of the scrolls, unravel its secrets. The way back seemed shorter, driven by the promise of healing and unconditional love for his granddaughters, who awaited him in that refuge of stone and mystery. He would not fail. He could not fail. Their lives depended on it. Alaric hurried back, his heart pounding in his chest, provisions clutched against his body, and the information about the night herb burning in his mind. Upon seeing the ruins of the fortress, a sigh of relief and anguish escaped his dry lips. Ilara and Lyra. He found them exactly where he had left them, huddled, the small fire almost out. With quick but gentle movements, he knelt beside them. Ilara's forehead was still warm to his touch, and Lyra coughed weakly in her sleep. First, warmth. He unrolled the piece of wool he had bought. A simple fabric, but one that promised more comfort than their worn cloaks. Carefully, he spread it over the girls, nestling them closer to each other. His wrinkled fingers smoothed Ilara's tangled hair. "Grandpa's back, my dears," he whispered. his voice thick with emotion. He rekindled the fire, adding twigs he had collected on the way, watching the flames dance and spread a welcome warmth. Next, food. He broke open the bread, tearing it into small pieces, and poured some milk into a metal ladle he always carried. Patiently, he woke Elara. The girl's eyes opened slowly, clouded with fever, but a faint glimmer of recognition appeared at the sight of the bread and milk. Alaric helped her drink and eat, a sip and a bite at a time, watching every movement with a father's anxiety. Lyra, still deeply asleep, received a few drops of milk on her lips, hoping the hydration would help her. With his granddaughters warmer and fed, Alaric turned to the scrolls. The night herb was the key, he knew. He unrolled the thinnest scroll, the one with the stylized leaf symbol, and spread it on a smooth stone near the fire. The flickering light danced over the ancient script, making the task even more challenging. His already tired eyes strained to discern the details. He traced the leaf symbol again, and then, with the fresh memory of the herbalist's words, began to search for patterns, for other leaves, for descriptions of damp and sheltered places. Hours dragged on. Alaric's mind, a labyrinth of forgotten knowledge, worked tirelessly, connecting fragments of his own wisdom with the mysteries of the scrolls. He murmured to himself, testing words, sounds, associations. Frustration was a constant shadow, but the image of his granddaughters, now sleeping more peacefully under the new blanket, was a beacon. Suddenly, a set of symbols stood out. It wasn't a leaf, but a representation of a place, a small cave, with water trickling down its walls, and a plant growing inside it, with leaves that, in the depiction, seemed to have the teardrop shape the herbalist had mentioned. And, beside it, a series of instructions, more pictorial than written, showing the careful harvesting of the plant, the grinding of its leaves, and the mixing with a liquid, perhaps water or honey. Alaric's heart leapt. It was the night herb, and there it was, not just the identification, but also the instructions for its use. The ancient civilization had left a guide, a map to healing. The joy and relief that flooded him were almost unbearable, making him tremble. His eyes welled up. He had found it. The cave's location wasn't explicit in words, but the adjacent symbols indicated a direction, a cardinal point relative to the fortress, and the mention of weeping rocks, a poetic description for a spring or waterfall. Alaric closed his eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility and the lightness of hope. He opened his eyes and looked at his granddaughters, a faint but genuine smile blossoming on his lips. The journey wasn't over yet, but now he had a clear path. He knew what to look for, where to look, and how to use it. The cure was within his reach, waiting to be found in the depths of the earth, a secret guarded for centuries, now revealed by a grandfather's love. Alaric took a deep breath, the icy air filling his tired lungs, but the determination in his eyes surpassed the cold. He knew what he had to do. The cave, the weeping rocks, the night herb. It all mapped out in his mind with clarity. He looked at Elara and Lyra, who slept more peacefully under the new wool blanket, their pale faces still marked by illness, but with a serenity he hadn't seen in a long time. Their sight was his fuel, the silent promise of a future he would fight to build. With extreme care so as not to wake them, Alaric rose. His bones cracked in protest, but he ignored the pain. He took the scroll with the instructions and tucked it into his cloak, along with the small shovel. He leaned down and kissed each granddaughter's forehead, a gesture of deep love and silent farewell. "Grandpa will be back. Have faith, my little ones," he whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. With each step away from them, his heart tightened, familiar anguish mixed with the urgency of his mission. The sun had barely begun to peek over the horizon, tinting the sky with shades of grey and pink. The terrain around the fortress was rugged, covered with loose stones and low-lying vegetation. Alaric followed the scroll's indications, which pointed east towards a denser area of rocks and valleys. His eyes, accustomed to observing nature, sought the weeping rocks, imagining a small waterfall or a hidden spring. Every step was an act of faith, a challenge to his age and exhaustion. He walked for hours, the wind cutting at his face, the solitude of the ruins weighing on him. The landscape seemed desolate, but Alaric refused to give up. He remembered the legends, the stories of his youth, of how nature guarded its most precious secrets in secluded places. It was then that, rounding a cluster of mossy stones, he heard it, a soft sound, a constant murmur of water, and just ahead he saw a wall of damp rock, where thin trickles of water ran down, forming small puddles on the ground. The weeping rocks. Alaric's heart raced. There it was. Near the base of the rock, hidden by dense foliage, was a dark opening, small enough for only one person to squeeze through. The cave. With the torch he had prepared, he lit a flickering flame and cautiously entered. The air inside was damp and cool, with an earthy, sweet scent. The torchlight revealed slippery stone walls, dripping water, and an uneven floor. His eyes swept the interior, searching for the plant described in the scrolls, and then he saw it. In a damp niche protected from direct light grew a plant with dark green leaves of a peculiar shape like small tears hanging from thin stems. The night herb. It emanated a subtle glow in the darkness, almost mystical. Alaric felt a mixture of reverence and urgency. With firm yet delicate hands, he followed the pictorial instructions on the scroll. He harvested only the most mature leaves, one by one, placing them carefully into a small cloth pouch he had brought. With each leaf harvested, he felt hope grow in his chest, a renewed strength that dispelled his weariness. He examined the plant with a sage's knowledge, admiring its resilience and the promise of healing it held. Mission accomplished, Alaric left the cave, the pouch of precious herbs in his hands. The way back seemed lighter, driven by the certainty that the cure was now within his reach. The sun was already higher in the sky, and the fortress seemed to call him back. He needed to run. There was no time to lose. His granddaughters awaited him, and with him the promise of a new dawn. He was not just a grandfather, but a guardian of an ancient secret, a reborn healer driven by the purest love. Alaric quickened his pace, the pouch of precious herbs clutched against his chest, his heart beating a frantic rhythm of hope. The fortress, with its broken towers, seemed to call to him. The image of Ilara and Lyra, pale and fragile, spurred him on. He could not fail. Upon reaching the recess, a sigh of relief and anguish escaped him. They were still there, huddled under the wool blanket, the fire almost out. Alaric's eyes filled with tears. With quick movements he knelt. Ilara's forehead was still warm, and Lyra coughed weakly in her sleep. First, warmth. He rekindled the fire. Then, the cure. Hands slightly trembling, Alaric took the instruction scroll. Spreading it on a smooth stone, daylight illuminated the pictorial symbols for preparing the night herb. He took the leaves from the pouch, their dark green, vibrant. He followed each step precisely, grinding them with a stone and fresh water, forming a greenish, aromatic paste. The earthy scent filled the air, a fragrance of promise. He felt responsibility and faith. With the paste ready, Alaric divided it. He approached Ilara. "My dear, wake up a little," he whispered, stroking her hair. Ilara's eyes opened, clouded, but a glimmer of trust appeared. "Drink this, it's to make you strong," he said, bringing the spoon to her lips. Ilara swallowed with difficulty, grimacing at the bitter taste, but she trusted him. Alaric hugged her, feeling her fragile body and the hope. Next, it was Lyra's turn. The girl was more lethargic. Alaric had to be patient, dripping the paste onto her lips until she swallowed. He covered both with the blanket, sitting between them, watching every breath. Hours dragged on. Ilara's fever seemed to lessen, and Lyra's cough quieted, but the improvement was subtle, almost imperceptible. Alaric's anxiety did not subside. As he waited, his heart in suspense, his tired eyes fell upon the other scrolls, still rolled. He had focused so much on the cure that he had barely touched them. With a sigh, he picked one up, unrolling it. It wasn't about herbs. This scroll revealed something different. A detailed map of the fortress with intricate markings and symbols he didn't understand. In the center, a stylized sun shone. Below, drawings that seemed to represent tools, seeds, and irrigation structures. Alaric felt a shiver. It wasn't just a cure, but a guide, a plan for life. The scroll spoke of how to prosper, to transform those ruins into a fertile and self-sufficient home. The ancient civilization had not only left the cure, but the knowledge to rebuild a future. The fortress was not just a refuge, but a promise. It was a turning point, a revelation that transcended initial hope. His eyes widened. His granddaughter's journey would not end with the cure. It would only begin there, within those walls, with the wisdom of a forgotten people. Alaric took a deep breath, the map scroll still in his trembling hands. The revelation was overwhelming. Not just the cure for Ilara and Lyra, but the seed of a future, a guide to transform those cold stones into a vibrant home. His eyes, once tearful with relief from the night herb, now shone with a new and profound understanding. The fortress was not the end of his journey, but the true beginning. He looked at his granddaughters. The morning sun already bathed the recess, and the light revealed a subtle, yet miraculous change in their faces. The pallor was still there, but the feverish redness had diminished. Ilara's breathing was softer, and Lyra, though still asleep, no longer coughed with the same painful frequency. With a heart full of gratitude, Alaric reached out and touched Ilara's forehead. It was warm, no longer scorching. A relief so profound it made him falter flooded him. Tears, which he had held back for so long, streamed freely down his wrinkles. The cure was working. The promise whispered across centuries had been fulfilled. He kissed the girl's forehead, a kiss laden with love, hope, and immense gratitude. Then he did the same with Lyra, feeling the same improvement. Exhaustion, which had been a constant companion for days, threatened to fell him, but the sight of his granddaughters and the scroll's promise kept him steady. He sat down again between them, the scrolls spread around him. The one with the fortress map was the most intriguing. He traced the lines with his finger, each symbol unraveling a new aspect of the life that could be built there. There were representations of water wells, of cultivated fields on sheltered terraces, of areas for raising small animals, and even an ingenious system for heating the deeper chambers of the fortress. Alaric's mind, a sage by nature, began to connect the dots. The ancient civilization had not only mastered medicine, but also engineering and agriculture. They had transformed adversity into opportunity, and now that knowledge was in his hands. The task seemed monumental for a man of his age, but the image of Ilara and Lyra running and laughing within those walls, healthy and happy, was an irresistible driving force. Ilara stirred, her eyes slowly opening. They were clearer, less clouded. She looked at her grandfather, a small smile blossoming on her dry lips. "Grandpa," she whispered, her voice still weak, but with a tone of recognition Alaric hadn't heard in a long time. "I'm thirsty." Alaric felt a warmth spread through his chest. "Yes, my dear. Grandpa is here." He took the flask of milk and helped her drink. Every sip Ilara took was a balm to Alaric's soul. She drank with more vigor than before, and her curious eyes fixed on the scrolls. "What are these drawings, Grandpa?" she asked. Pointing to the fortress map, Alaric smiled, a genuine smile he hadn't felt in a long time. "They are the secrets of this place, my little one. secrets that will teach us how to build a new home, a place where we will be strong and happy. He felt a lump in his throat, but this time it was from pure emotion. The journey of healing was transforming into a journey of rebuilding, and he knew that, with the wisdom of the ancients and the love for his granddaughters, they would prosper. The sun rose, and with it the promise of a day full of work, but also of an unwavering hope that illuminated every corner of that ancient fortress. He knew that every stone, every crevice, every symbol on the scrolls held a part of the future he was destined to build for his granddaughters. The fortress, once a dark refuge, was now a beacon of possibilities, a silent testament to human resilience and the transformative power of love. Alaric felt the first aches of mourning in his muscles, but his mind was clear, his heart light, and his soul filled with renewed purpose. Life for them was just beginning. He knelt beside Ilara, whose now brighter eyes scanned the symbols on the scroll. "These drawings, Grandpa, what do they mean?" Her weak voice carried a curiosity that warmed Alaric's heart. He smiled, a smile that reached his eyes. "They mean a new beginning, my little one. A home we will build together, with the wisdom of the ancients." He pointed to a symbol of a well, with winding lines indicating water. "First, fresh and abundant water. The scroll shows a collection and storage system that we can restore." The task was immense, but Alaric felt renewed energy. With simple words, he explained to Ilara what each drawing represented. Channels for water, terraces for plants, even an oven for bread. Ilara listened attentively, wide-eyed, imagining the possibilities. Lyra, still in a deep sleep, breathed more easily, her face less pale. Alaric touched her forehead, feeling a gentle warmth. The cure was working. While the girls rested, Alaric decided to inspect the location indicated for the well. The map showed a lower area in the fortress, near an outer wall where humidity was higher. He took the shovel and, with a last look at his granddaughters, departed. The sun was already high, revealing the grandeur and decay of the ruins. Every stone told a forgotten story. He found the spot easily, a depression in the ground covered by rubble and weeds. The scroll indicated an underground spring with an ingenious well built by the ancients. Alaric began to dig, the shovel raising dust and stone fragments. His muscles protested, but the image of his granddaughters smiling was a powerful incentive. He worked for hours, stopping only to breathe and drink the little water from his flask. With each layer removed, hope grew. He found worked stones, traces of the well's ancient structure, and a damp smell emanated from the hole. It was a sign. The well was there, waiting to be rediscovered. The exhaustion was immense, but the satisfaction of each victory was a balm. At sunset, Alaric decided to return to the girls. He had made considerable progress, clearing a significant part of the well. As he approached, he saw Ilara sitting, watching Lyra, now awake and weakly playing with a piece of cloth. Both had a sparkle in their eyes that hadn't been there before. "Grandpa!" exclaimed Ilara, a wide, genuine smile lighting up her face. "Lyra is better. She even smiled." Alaric felt his heart overflow. He knelt, embracing them tenderly. "Yes, my dears, you're getting strong. And Grandpa found the well. Soon we'll have fresh water to drink and water our plants." He showed them a piece of worked stone from the well, a fragment with an ancient symbol. "This is a piece of our new home, my little ones, a piece of our future." Ilara took the stone, her little fingers tracing the symbol. "Are we going to have a garden, Grandpa, with flowers and fruits?" "Yes, my dear, and much more. We will build a place where life will flourish, happy and safe." Alaric's voice was choked. He looked at the ruins, no longer with despair, but with a clear vision of a future. The fortress was not just a refuge, but a life project, a testament to love and resilience. Night fell, bringing with it the cold, but the warmth in Alaric's heart was stronger. He knew the path would be long and arduous, but he would not be alone. His granddaughters, with their faith and growing vitality, were proof that hope, like underground water, would always find a way to the surface. Tomorrow would bring more work, but also the promise of one more step towards the home they were destined to build. The next morning brought with it the promise of a new day, and Alaric, though he felt aches in every muscle of his tired body, rose with a clarity of purpose that dispelled any lingering discouragement. The sun, still low on the horizon, painted the sky with soft hues of orange and pink, and the light, filtering through the cracks of the fortress, seemed more welcoming. He approached Ilara and Lyra. Both slept deeply, but their faces were less pale, and Lyra's breathing was regular and calm. Ilara's fever had completely disappeared, and a faint, healthy blush began to color her cheeks. Alaric felt a lump in his throat, but this time it was from pure gratitude. The cure, the miracle of the ancients, was fully manifesting. Carefully he rekindled the fire, the smell of smoke and burning wood filling the air. He prepared a simple breakfast, the remaining bread and a little milk. Ilara woke first, her eyes opening without the cloudiness of illness. She looked at Alaric and smiled, a genuine smile that lit up the entire recess. "Good morning, Grandpa," she said, her voice still a little weak but clear. Alaric hugged her tenderly, feeling the renewed strength in her small body. "Good morning, my flower. How do you feel?" Ilara nodded vigorously. "Better. I don't feel cold anymore and my throat doesn't hurt." Lyra also woke, stretching with a small yawn. At the sight of the bread and milk, her eyes widened with hunger and joy. Alaric helped them eat, watching them with an overflowing heart. With each bite, each sip, he saw life return to their eyes. After breakfast, Ilara, with renewed energy, picked up the map scroll. "Grandpa, what are we going to build today? Where is the garden you talked about?" Her curiosity was a balm to Alaric's soul. He sat beside them, pointing to the symbols on the scroll. "Today, my dear, we will continue to work on the well. It is our first and most important task. Without water, we cannot have a garden, nor plants, nor animals." He explained patiently, showing the drawings of channels and reservoirs. The ancients were very wise. They knew how to bring water into the fortress, even in times of drought. Ilara listened with fascination, imagining the water flowing through the channels. Lyra, though quieter, watched the drawings with interest, nibbling on the bread. Alaric decided that with the girls stronger, he could leave them for longer while he worked. "You two can stay here, near the fire, and play with the cloths. Grandpa won't go far." He kissed their foreheads and set off again for the well site. Taking the shovel and an unwavering determination, the work was arduous. With each layer of earth and rubble he removed, Alaric revealed more of the well's ancient structure. Stones carved with millimeter precision, fitted without mortar, formed a perfect cylinder that descended into the darkness. It was a testament to the ingenuity of a forgotten civilization. His shoulders ached, his hands were raw, but with each stone unearthed, the image of Ilara and Lyra, healthy and smiling, spurred him on. Hours passed, and the sun was already beginning to lean towards the west when Alaric felt the tip of his shovel touch something different. It was neither stone nor earth, but a smooth, cold material. He dug more carefully and soon revealed a polished stone slab, with a symbol engraved on its surface, the same stylized sun from the map scroll. It was the lid of the well's main reservoir. With a monumental effort, he managed to move it enough to peek. Down below, in the darkness, he heard the unmistakable sound of running water. An underground spring, pure and crystalline, awaited them. Alaric felt his eyes well up again, but this time they were tears of triumph and hope. The water, The source of life was there within his reach. He knew there was still much to do to restore the complete system, but the first and most vital step had been taken. He covered the opening with the slab, promising to return the next day for more detailed work. Upon returning to the recess, he found Ilara and Lyra playing, giggling softly as they made little houses with pieces of cloth. The sight of them, so full of life, filled his heart with indescribable joy. "Grandpa!" exclaimed Ilara, running to hug him. "You're back!" Lyra even ran a little. Alaric smiled, kneeling to embrace them. "Yes, my dears, and Grandpa has wonderful news. I found the water. The spring is there, waiting for us." He felt their energy, the hope they represented, and knew that every effort was worth it. The fortress was no longer just ruins. It was a home under construction, a testament to love and resilience, where life, like underground water, would always find a way to flourish. The night brought a deeper, more peaceful sleep for Alaric, lulled by the wind in the towers, now a gentle lullaby. He awoke before dawn, his body aching, but his spirit in ecstasy. He looked at Ilara and Lyra, nestled together. Their faces, once pale, now showed a healthy flush. Lyra's breathing was light, and Ilara, asleep, wore a faint smile. The ancestral cure was weaving life back into their small bodies. After a hearty breakfast with the remaining bread and a little milk, Alaric prepared for the day. Ilara, her eyes bright with renewed energy, clutched the map scroll. "Grandpa, can we see the water today? How will it get here?" Her eyes shone with contagious curiosity, and a wide smile lit up her face. Lyra, quieter but equally attentive, nodded, her eyes fixed on her grandfather. Alaric knelt, his gaze tender. "Yes, my dears. Today the water will dance for us. Grandpa will guide it to the small reservoir the ancients made nearby." He pointed to a section of the map, indicating a smaller basin a few steps from the recess. "It will be our first great gift from the fortress." He left them playing with their cloth scraps, promising to return soon. His heart was light, but a tremor of anticipation ran through him. It was the culmination of days of arduous work, a testament to ancestral wisdom and his unwavering love. Back at the main well, Alaric carefully removed the polished stone slab. The sound of the underground spring was louder now, a constant, joyful murmur. He descended into the cool, damp darkness, carrying a small torch. The ancient channels, now almost all cleared, snaked away from the main reservoir. His task today was to ensure that the final stretch of the channel, leading to the smaller basin near their living space, was completely free of debris. He worked methodically, his calloused, strong hands clearing stubborn roots and small stones. The air was heavy with the smell of damp earth and ancient rock. Hours slipped away. The sun rose high, then began its slow descent towards the western horizon. Alaric felt a surge of energy as he removed the last significant blockage. He knew that section of the channel was now ready. With a deep sigh, he returned to the main sluice gate, the one he had partially opened yesterday. With a grunt, he pushed the heavy stone lever fully open. A powerful gush of clear, cold water erupted into the channel, its sound echoing through the underground passages. He hurried back, following the water's path. He could hear it now, a louder, more insistent flow. As he approached the recess, he saw Ilara and Lyra standing at the edge of the small circular basin indicated on the map, their faces lit with wonder. A trickle of water, then a wider stream, began to flow into the basin, swirling gently. The girls gasped, their eyes wide. "Grandpa, the water, it's here!" Ilara shouted, jumping. Lyra, usually reserved, clapped her hands, a pure and joyful sound. Alaric knelt beside them, tears blurring his vision. He watched as the basin, dry for centuries, slowly began to fill, reflecting the faint light of the afternoon sun. He reached out, scooping a handful of the fresh, crystalline water. "Yes, my dears, the water has arrived. It is life returning to us." He offered it to Ilara, who drank eagerly, a smile spreading across her face. Lyra followed, her small hands cupped in the water Alaric offered. The taste was sweet, pure, a taste of triumph. The sound of flowing water was a melody, a promise fulfilled. Alaric looked at his granddaughters, their faces glowing with health and happiness, and then at the fortress walls, now shimmering with the reflection of the new water. This was not just a place to survive, it was a place to live, to prosper. The ancient knowledge, the treasure, the cure, everything had led to this moment. The climax was not just the arrival of the water, but the profound change it represented, the definitive end of their desperate struggle and the vibrant beginning of their new life. The fortress, once a tomb of despair, was now a cradle of hope, its ancient heart beating again with the rhythm of running water and the laughter of two little girls. The stone basin, now full, reflected the twilight sky, and Ilara and Lyra's small hands splashed in the water, their laughter echoing through the ancient walls. Alaric watched, his chest swelling with an emotion so pure it almost hurt. He knelt, feeling the coolness of the water on his wrinkled fingers. "See, my dears," he said, his voice choked. "This is our first victory, the water that will give us life." Ilara, with bright eyes, dipped her face into the basin, eagerly sipping the water. Lyra, imitating her, laughed as the water trickled down her chin. The simple gesture, the genuine joy, was proof that life was, indeed, returning. That night, the fire crackled with a more welcoming warmth. It wasn't just the heat of the wood, but the warmth of hope that warmed their hearts. Alaric prepared a simple but hearty meal, with the last of their supplies and the fresh water. The taste of each mouthful was a reminder of the journey they had traveled and the future that was opening up. Ilara and Lyra slept deeply. Their dreams, Alaric was sure, were now populated by blooming gardens and bubbling streams. At dawn, the air was fresh and clear. Alaric felt a renewed vigor, an energy he hadn't felt in years. The map scroll was unrolled again, but this time not with the urgency of despair, but with the calm of strategy. "Today, my flowers," he announced, pointing to the drawings of terraces and channels, "we will start our garden. The ancients taught us how to cultivate the land, even here, within these walls." Ilara jumped, her hair flying. "A real garden, Grandpa, with seeds." Lyra clapped her hands, wide-eyed. Alaric led them to an area indicated on the map, a sunny courtyard near the water basin. The soil was rocky and covered with weeds, but Alaric's vision already transformed it into an oasis. With the shovel, he began to remove the larger stones, preparing the earth. Ilara and Lyra, with small twigs, imitated their grandfather, digging small imaginary holes. With each stone removed, each handful of loose earth, Alaric felt the fortress transform, not just physically but in purpose. He explained how the ancients used terraces to harness every ray of sun and every drop of water. With the knowledge from the scrolls, he planned a simple irrigation system, diverting water from the basin into small furrows he carefully dug. It was meticulous work, but every movement was full of meaning. By late afternoon, the first flower bed was ready, the earth dark and damp, awaiting the seeds. Alaric took the seeds he had found in the secret chamber from his basket, small promises of life, guarded for centuries. He handed them to Ilara and Lyra, whose eyes shone with reverence. "These are seeds of a plant the ancients called grain of life," he explained. "They grow quickly and will give us food." With their little fingers, the girls planted the first seeds, covering them with soft earth. Alaric, with a small pitcher, watered them with the spring water. Watching his granddaughters kneeling in the earth with dirty hands and faces illuminated by hope, Alaric felt a profound peace. The expulsion, the illness, the despair, all of it seemed distant, like a nightmare dispelled by the light of dawn. The fortress, once a dark refuge, was now a home pulsating with life, a testament that, even in the deepest ruins, hope can flourish. They not only survived, they were rebuilding, stone by stone, seed by seed, a prosperous future full of love, guided by the wisdom of the past and the unwavering strength of their family connection. Months turned into seasons, and seasons into a full year since Alaric and his granddaughters had planted the first seeds of the grain of life. The fortress, once a dark labyrinth of cold stones, was now a vibrant oasis, a silent testament to human resilience and the transformative power of love. The small initial flowerbed had expanded into a lush garden, where rows of golden grains swayed gently in the wind, and aromatic herbs exuded their healing perfumes. The water basin, always full, irrigated not only the fields, but also Alaric's soul. Elara and Lyra, now with a healthy glow in their eyes and inexhaustible energy, ran through the clean courtyards of the fortress. Their laughter, once muffled by illness, echoed free and joyful, filling every corner with the melody of life. Pale faces had given way to rosy cheeks and a vigor Alaric never thought he would see again. Elara, with her insatiable curiosity, helped her grandfather decipher the ancient scrolls, learning about the stars, the seasons, and the cycles of life. Lyra, more practical, loved caring for the small seedlings, her delicate fingers handling the earth with reverence. Alaric, though his hair was even whiter and his hands more wrinkled, felt a renewed vitality. The pain of expulsion and the despair of yesteryear had been replaced by a profound peace and gratitude. He watched his granddaughters, their hearts beating in unison with his, and knew he had found not just a refuge, but a greater purpose. The fortress was no longer a hiding place. It was a home, a sanctuary of knowledge and love, where past and future intertwined. Days were filled with work and learning. Alaric taught the girls to harvest, to prepare the grains, to care for the small animals they had managed to attract within the protected walls. He read to them the stories of the ancients, tales of wisdom and harmony with nature, which fascinated and inspired them. With each lesson, each discovery in the scrolls, their connection deepened, weaving a tapestry of mutual love and respect. Justice for Alaric was no longer a matter of vengeance against those who had expelled them, but the intrinsic justice of having rebuilt a dignified and prosperous life from nothing. Overcoming was not just surviving illness, but flourishing, creating beauty and abundance where before there had only been abandonment. He knew that the knowledge of the ancients was a treasure that transcended coins and jewels. It was the key to a full life, and he was determined to pass it on to Elara and Lyra. On a sunny afternoon, as the sun painted the sky with hues of gold and purple, Alaric sat with his granddaughters at the edge of the water basin. The garden flourished around them, and the air was sweet with the smell of earth and life. Elara, nestled in his arm, asked, "Grandpa, do you miss the village?" Alaric smiled, stroking her hair. "No, my flower, my home is where you are, where life flourishes and love guides us." Lyra, holding a handful of freshly harvested seeds, looked at her grandfather with her big, bright eyes. "Shall we plant more, Grandpa, so we can have an even bigger garden?" Alaric nodded, his eyes welling up with serene joy. "Yes, my dears, we will always plant more, not just seeds in the earth, but seeds of hope, knowledge and kindness in our hearts. And perhaps one day we can share this abundance with others who seek a new beginning." He hugged them tightly, feeling the warmth of their small bodies, each beat an echo of the life they had rescued. The fortress, with its ancient walls and its new pulsating heart, was now the epicenter of a new era, a beacon that, even in the deepest ruins, life always finds a way to flourish. The love of a family, guided by ancestral wisdom and unwavering resilience, not only built a future but redefined what it meant to have a home. The journey of Alaric, Ilara, and Lyra was not just a story of survival, but an epic of rebirth, an eternal testament to the strength of the human spirit and the beauty of family connection, which transformed a refuge of despair into a legacy of prosperity, peace, and a promising future, where every seed planted was a prayer and every laugh a song of gratitude. Years had woven a rich tapestry over the ancient stones of the fortress. Ilara and Lyra, now vibrant young women, walked through the courtyards with the grace and wisdom that life and the scrolls had taught them. Their steps were firm. Their eyes, once clouded by illness, shone with keen intelligence and deep compassion. Alaric, though more stooped by time, radiated a serenity that only true peace can bestow. His hair was a white mantle, but his gaze still carried the spark of the sage, now tempered by a grandfather's tenderness. The garden, once a handful of seeds, had transformed into a vast mosaic of life. The grains of life stretched in golden fields, and medicinal herbs, whose secrets the scrolls revealed, grew in abundance, offering healing and comfort. The water channels, once just a murmur, now sang a constant melody, nourishing every corner of the fortress. Small stone houses, built with the help of a few families who, drawn by rumors of a sanctuary of hope, had found their way there, dotted the courtyards. Alaric and his granddaughters had reached out, offering shelter, food, and the knowledge of the ancients, transforming the refuge into a small but prosperous community. Ilara, with her sharp mind, dedicated herself to studying the scrolls, becoming the guardian of ancestral knowledge. She taught the newly arrived children to read the symbols, to understand the cycles of nature, and to honor the wisdom of the past. Her gestures were precise, her voice soft, but full of authority. Lyra, with her gentle heart and skillful hands, tended the gardens and animals, transforming the arid land into a fertile paradise. She planted with love, harvested with gratitude, and shared with generosity, reflecting the essence of altruism that Alaric had instilled in them. On a harvest afternoon, as the sun set in shades of orange and purple, Alaric sat on a stone bench, observing the activity. Children ran and laughed, adults worked in harmony, and the smell of fresh bread hung in the air. Ilara and Lyra approached, each with a basket full of freshly harvested grains. "Grandpa," Ilara said, her eyes fixed on the horizon, "do you remember when it was just the three of us, and the fortress seemed so big and empty?" Alaric smiled, reaching out to embrace them. "I remember my flower, but the emptiness was just the space for what was to come. Your love was the first seed, and the wisdom of the ancients, the water that made it grow." Lyra, with a radiant smile, placed her basket on the ground. "Now, Grandpa, the fortress is a home for many, and there is always enough for everyone." Alaric nodded, feeling the warmth of the sun on his wrinkled face and the warmth of love in his heart. Justice had been served, not through retribution, but through the building of something greater and more beautiful than they could ever have dreamed in their old village. Overcoming was not just the healing of illness, but the creation of a new society based on the values they cherished. Human connection, once lost, had been rediscovered and multiplied. He looked at the starry sky that was beginning to reveal itself and felt immense gratitude. The fortress, once a refuge of despair, was now a beacon of hope, a living testament that, even in the deepest ruins, life always finds a way to flourish. Alaric's legacy was not just the treasure or the scrolls, but the community he and his granddaughters had nurtured, a place where kindness and knowledge were the pillars of a promising future. Every laugh that echoed through the walls, every seed planted with care, was a song of gratitude, a hymn to the resilience of the human spirit and the unwavering power of family love. The journey had not ended, but had transformed into a path of continuous sharing and growth, where the future was as vast and promising as the sky above them.